I sat down at my usual table in the corner of the diner and picked up the menu. I was a regular here, and the cook already knew what I wanted, but I didn't like to stand out. My dark, vaporous form would likely draw some attention anyway, but at least I could hide my face behind this sheet of laminated cardstock. Looks like they serve ginger pancakes now. I'll have to try those sometime. You wanted to see me here? My partner, a human, stood beside the table. I waved my hand, and he sat down across from me. Any luck? I asked, not lowering the menu. None so far. None of the victims actually saw the guy, and most of them haven't recovered enough to even speak coherently. Lately, someone was going around stealing people's shadows. The victims had been left barely responsive, constantly shivering from phantom chills. No one saw the perpetrator, but some suspected he might be a shadow himself. Half of my usual order arrived, a plate of crispy bacon with a black coffee on the side. I looked up at the waitress, a rather attractive shadow, I must say. Excuse me, but where's the rest of it? Not to be rude, but my meals are usually served all at once. I tilted my head toward the plate devoid of pancakes. I'm sorry, sir, but we're having a shortage of ingredients today, she spoke very professionally. The new ginger pancakes are more popular than we expected, and we've run out of the flour mix. Would you like a substitute? I looked at the menu again to find something to my liking. I'll just have toast. She nodded with a small smile and walked away. You'd make a fine couple, Lewis, my partner joked, leaning on the table with his chin in his hand. I rolled my eyes and glanced around the diner at the various people and shadows enjoying their breakfasts. So, we have no leads at all? Well, my partner droned. From the broken descriptions a few of the victims gave, we can assume our suspicions were right. The perpetrator must be a shadow. My grip tightened around the menu. A human criminal was one thing, but a member of my own kind? Humans were the reason we existed at all. A shadow committing crimes against a human was a serious breach of our natural relationship. My toast arrived, and I thanked the waitress. I waited for her to leave before picking up the conversation. So, do we have any plans to catch this guy? I asked my partner. We have more officers patrolling the types of places he seems to like to strike his victims. It's hard to put an APB out on a shadow. I took a bite of a bacon strip. The flavor and the crunch satisfied like always. Even if this doesn't catch him, we'll soon learn his attack pattern. After breakfast, I stepped outside and breathed in the morning air. This was a small suburb, so the smell wasn't pungent like in the big city. I thought back to my human. He wasn't my partner in the local precinct. He lived alone uptown. He wasn't too fond of the idea of independent shadows and was appalled when I started to separate. I couldn't stand the guy's attitude anyway, so I left as soon as I was able. A metallic clang echoed from behind the diner. Probably a raccoon digging in the trash. Commonplace here, but with the uptick in crimes lately, I had to check it out. I hurried through the parking lot and stepped behind the garbage bins to confirm my assumptions, only to be met with the sight of a new victim of the Shadow Snatcher. I crouched quickly and felt for a pulse, my hand on my radio. Attack victim behind Sunrise Diner. Get an ambulance here fast. My gaze darted past the slumped form of the human, scanning the area quickly for any sign of the attacker. At the far end of the lot, I barely caught a glimpse of a silhouette darting around the next building. Acting on instinct, I bolted after them. This was an opportunity I wouldn't miss. With every twist and turn around shops and through parking lots, I managed to keep an eye on the Snatcher to see where they went. I kept running as fast as I could manage, trying to close the gap between us, but they seemed to get farther and farther away. Exhaustion took me over too quickly. Gasping for breath, I slumped against the back wall of a mechanic's shop. I was so close, so damn close. After regaining my breath, I retraced my steps back to the victim, who had been found by a couple that had been passing by. I showed them my badge and told them the ambulance was on the way. While waiting, I tried to interrogate the victim, asking them what happened. But like the others, they could only mumble words that didn't line up into anything understandable. The ambulance arrived to take the unfortunate man away. I watched as the flashing lights and the sirens gradually vanished down the road past the buildings and decorative trees. I cursed myself for not being faster. If I could have run just a bit more quickly. "Hey, I heard the commotion. What happened?" My partner came running from where he'd parked his patrol car in the side lot. "The Shadow Snatcher," I grunted. "He struck again right next to us." I put my back against a nearby lamppost. Bastard's got guts, I'll give him that. In broad daylight behind a diner cops like to eat at? Did you get a good look at him? Only his back. He had a dark coat on and a tall hat. That's about all I could make out. It matched the descriptions pieced together from the other victims. I never saw his face. My partner cursed through his teeth. "We have to catch this guy before he hits again." He backed up against another pole and lit a cigarette. "Those things will kill you, you know." I pointed to the smoking stick now in his mouth. "I'll make sure to stop before then." I looked up to the sky. The day was still young, and the Snatcher was still at large. I sighed and walked away with no particular destination in mind. Walking alone helped me organize my thoughts and relieve the stress of the tense action. One thing about the Shadow Snatcher bothered me, the one thing that was missing from the case: a motive. What could he be getting out of stealing people's shadows? I could understand kidnapping one that had already separated from its human for ransom. But to straight up rip one away? What did they get from that? All it did was harm the humans, turning them into cold, half-dead masses. I doubted the shadows were in any better condition. Shadows attain sentience by watching and learning from their human. They might separate to live on their own, but not all shadows could. Some would never even attain awareness, let alone separate. This wasn't a process you could force either. It either happens, or it doesn't. Additionally, the mortality of a shadow was ultimately linked to their human. If the shadow died, the human would fall ill. If the human died, the shadow would vanish. The shadows in the Snatcher's possession were likely suffering, scared, or fading into nothingness. Someone screamed off to my left. The sharp sound cut off suddenly. I rushed around a thick hedge to the back of a strip mall, where I found a woman standing over a man whose shadow had been taken. I ran to their side. "Did you see who did this? Where did they go?" I spoke quickly, trying not to waste time. The woman pointed past a parked trailer. "I saw him turn left down that way." "Call 911, I instructed as I ran in the direction she pointed. Beyond the trailer stood a chain-link fence. He must have climbed over. There was no way to know which way he went after that, so I turned back to the couple. Then it hit me. The Snatcher always attacked lone victims before. Were they changing their MO? What would make them attack two people in the same day? I hurried back to the victim and crouched on the ground beside him. The woman stood several paces away, facing toward the road to watch for the ambulance. The victim shivered violently and writhed on the dirty blacktop. I did what I could for him, mumbling what I hoped were reassuring words. With such intense focus, I didn't notice the approach until it was too late. The sharp point of a blade pricked my neck. "You got a little too close last time." Before I could react, a sharp pain tore through me. The black, viscous fluid that was my lifeblood pooled on the ground as I fell over, consciousness slipping away. I strained to look up and see my attacker, the Snatcher. All I could make out before total darkness took me was the tail of a dark coat hurrying away. I woke up in pain with a thick bandage wound around my neck. The blinding white ceiling of a hospital room forced my eyes to stay closed a little longer. "You're awake!" My partner perched on a chair by my side. "What the hell happened to you?" "Not so loud," I groaned. A splitting headache added to the pain of the knife wound. The Snatcher struck again. They stabbed me. I figured that much, but did you get a better look at them? I slowly tilted my head back and forth to test the pull of stitches and deep muscle ache in my neck. No, wait. What about the woman? What woman? There were two people in the alley, I struggled to say. A man and a woman. The Snatcher must have come back for her. What are you talking about? There was only one victim next to you, a man. My eyes shot open. What about the woman? What happened to her? Lewis, It was just the two of you in that alley. There was no one else. The Snatcher let her go? He didn't take her shadow? Or did hers already separate from her before then? Can you look into her? I can give a description, and maybe the victim could tell us who she was. After my partner left, my mind started racing. If the woman was a friend of the victim, why would she leave before the ambulance came? And why would the Snatcher leave her alone? Was she someone who they didn't want? Did they ignore her due to the lack of a shadow? Or was there some other reason? I tried to lean forward, but the pain in my neck screamed in protest. I was in no condition to go anywhere. You're lucky to be alive after that. A nurse came into the room. Not many shadows can survive such a serious knife wound. Not many humans do either. I strained to speak. It all comes down to the attacker having either bad aim or better intentions than killing you. Saying that opened more thoughts about the Snatcher. Did they have another purpose in mind other than harming people? I looked up at the nurse and saw the gleaming yellow eyes of a shadow looking down at me. I'd never met her, but something about her seemed oddly familiar. I spotted the name tag on her uniform. Have we met before, Daniela? I feel like I've seen you somewhere. I really don't think so. The nurse paused. Well, it's possible, she stuttered. I live locally, so you might have seen me in passing. Her behavior felt odd to me. Something wasn't right with her. If you'll excuse me, I have a lot of other patients to attend to. She turned to walk away. Something about her stride seemed familiar to me as well. Too familiar, but I couldn't place it. Why did I recognize her, and where did I know her from? The pain and the meds they had me on made thinking difficult. Hours passed. I drifted in and out of sleep, losing whatever thread of thought that formed before they gave me a new dose of pain meds. My partner knocked on the doorframe before entering the room to visit me later. Any luck finding her? I asked. No luck finding the woman you described, but we did find something about the victims. No matter where they were attacked, they all ended up in this hospital. Most of them are still here upstairs in a private ward. I raised a brow. All of the victims came to this hospital? Then I remembered the nurse who attended me. Could you get someone, a doctor or administrator in here? I want to ask them something. My partner walked back to the door and flagged down the first doctor he spotted. A man in a white coat walked in. You wanted to see me? Yes. I want to ask about one of your nurses, a shadow named Daniela. Who? A cold shock ran through my body. Daniela? The nurse who attended me earlier? The doctor looked back at my partner, who shrugged. Sir, there is no one by that name among our staff. Are you sure it wasn't a visitor? She had a uniform on. That's what her name tag said. Are you sure no one by that name works here? This isn't a big hospital. A lot of the staff here knows each other by name, and we've not hired anyone by that name lately. I dropped my head back on the pillow, my brow tightening. Find her. If what you're saying is true, you might have a dangerous imposter in the hospital. The doctor left in a rush. My partner came back to my side. Louis, what are you thinking? It all was coming together. She might be the Snatcher. What? The victims all came to this hospital. If the Snatcher pretended to be an employee, then they'd have access to the victims after the attacks. And the way that nurse moved, her posture, her outline, it was all too familiar, and she acted nervous when I asked her if I'd seen her before. What about the woman you saw before, the one who escaped? An accomplice, maybe? I asked, not expecting an answer. Not quite. A female voice spoke from behind my partner. He turned around to reveal the woman I had seen behind the shops. That's her, I shouted. She's the woman quickly shushed me, glancing around in a panic. She can't know I'm here. Who are you? My partner slowly reached for his weapon. I'm Daniela. I am a nurse, but not at this hospital. The fake nurse you saw is my shadow. She's been using my uniform to pose as a nurse here. Is she the Snatcher? I asked her, waving my hand for her to come closer. She is. But she told me not to tell anyone, or else she'd... Daniela shuddered. Why is she doing this? Tears shone at the corners of the woman's eyes. She spoke haltingly through the frightened sobs. She hates humans. She believes it's possible for a shadow to develop without one. So she's trying to force them to. Her shoulders shook. She's trying to raise a group of humanless shadows. But that's not possible, my partner said. I know it's not, but she's convinced otherwise. She thinks if a shadow develops without a human, they won't have their mortality linked, that they'll be able to live separate from each other. Daniela paused to catch a breath. She's completely mad. Click. All three of us looked to the corner of the room next to the door. The fake nurse stood in the dark holding a revolver pointed at us. I guess I didn't do a very good job of killing you, detective, she snapped. My partner gripped his weapon in its holster. Lower your weapon. No one needs to die today. The shadow raised a finger and waved it like she was scolding a child. I beg to differ. Daniela's fearful sobs intensified. And I'll start with you. No, Daniela wailed. Please, you don't have to do this. To prove I can live without you, I'll do everything it takes. She pulled the trigger, the gunshot deafening. Daniela fell backward onto the floor, a messy hole in her forehead. See? A shadow can live without... The shadow's head exploded into a cloud of black smoke, and the rest of her body evaporated. The smoke rushed to the floor and pooled around Daniela's body as if it had never separated. My partner and I stared in shock at the Snatcher's last victim on the floor. All the Snatcher proved was that her crimes were for naught. Security rushed into the room. We both explained everything as Daniela's body was taken away. The hospital was later investigated, and the stolen shadows were found in a locked room in the basement, none of which had attained awareness. They were all returned to their respective humans, who were able to leave within hours of reuniting. My partner visited me 2 days after my release from the hospital. Over takeout and iced tea, we chatted about the case. Well, at least that's all over, my partner sighed. Like her plan was ever going to work, I scoffed. I still can't tell if she was crazy or stupid. Maybe a little of both. Either way, the Snatcher isn't a problem anymore. He got up to leave. Hey, Lewis. I looked up from my plate. Once you're all healed up, how about you try those ginger pancakes at the diner? Shake things up a bit. Maybe you'll see that cute waitress again. He smirked. I smiled. You know what? I think I will.